At the end of the day, nobody's going to take better care of you than you. So it's manufactured, whereas peptide therapy, it's your own body doing it. I woke up one morning and I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, you're back. And if I can make a small dent in that, I think, that fills my cup.
Welcome back to Breaking Barriers Beyond the Finish Line. I'm Lou Greco, founder of Titan 6 Actual, alongside my co-host, Coach Grip, founder of 3GX Mental Performance Training. Today, we have a special guest and slight departure from the norm. Kris Culberston is a board-certified neurophysiologist, if I pronounce that correctly, specializing in peptide therapy. So we're thrilled to have him on, discussing how he got to where he is today, the various applications of peptide therapy, his vision for helping athletes, our nation's military, everyday people. So before we dive in, Kris, can you share a little bit about yourself, what inspired you to get into this field?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind introduction. I've worked in traditional medicine my entire career. COVID was an interesting time, and it really opened my eyes to what is happening in medicine, kind of as you speak it currently. Where patient care is kind of by the wayside and it's all for profit. People aren't looking for a cure; they're looking for a treatment, right? Pharmaceutical companies, hospital systems, right? You keep this motion, this wheel going. And so it forced me to pivot. I've been in private practice my entire career. I don't work for a hospital system. I contract with them. And so during that time, I was cleaning out my 401k to keep my staff afloat and keep everybody fed, and started to look for different avenues of revenue. And, with that, it became a thing of like, I was selling IVs, and then we kind of stepped into hormone replacement, but it opened my eyes to the world of peptide therapy. And in my, humble opinion, that is the future of medicine. So I stepped into it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick. I mean, I know we're going to deep dive a little bit on this stuff, but high level, like average everyday person, what exactly is peptide therapy?
Peptide therapy is they exist in our body, right? Peptides, they exist. So there's a peptide for just about everything. They're amino acid chains that can tell our body to do certain things. So whether it's produce more growth hormone or weight loss or cognitive function, there's a peptide that exists in our body. And what we do is, we insert more of those amino acid chains and we kind of turn up the volume on those processes in your body.
Awesome. Okay. Appreciate that, because I kind of just, barely scratched the surface in talking with you and researching to go, what the heck is that? I've heard it bouncing all around, but yeah.
Absolutely. No, there's a lot to it for sure.
All right. So sorry to interrupt you. You were talking.
No, yeah, and so, the world opened its doors to me. The universe spoke, and we've stepped into this full force, and it's been incredible. The amount of good that we've already done in a short amount of time is pretty incredible, and I'm just very excited for the future with what we're doing here, and the ability to kind of affect humanity. Right, that's kind of my goal is, to give access to not only, high-level athletes, right? Like we, work with NFL alumni, we work with some WWE guys, but I want access for everyone, right? Like John Smith down the street deserves the same as anybody else.
So, how long has peptide therapy been a thing? I guess mainstream.
Not long. 15, 20 years, maybe. The thing is, in my opinion, Big Pharma has done a good job at stifling this, right? Because it works. Europe, the EU has embraced peptide therapy a long time ago. Most of the studies on peptide therapy are out of the EU. we've done some internally that are pretty incredible. And we're getting there as far as, getting the lid off this thing, in the United States. But that's it, right? The only peptides that are really widely known are the weight loss peptides, and it's simply because they work so well. So big pharma attach themselves to it.
Yeah,
Um,
dollar figures, right?
Yeah,
It's a
shocker.
exactly.
big industry, weight loss, and people
That's
looking
it.
for a magic bullet. So,
That's it. That's it.
I know 15, 20 years isn't really in the grand scheme of, medicine is not really, it's a blink of an eye, right? Are there any like significant milestones to from like when it first became mainstream and I guess today, and are you involved in any like R&D side?
So, that's what's funny, right? Is you want to try to timestamp these things, but as we all know, like it's the technological era in the world, flies, right? So,
Right.
for instance,
Exponential.
my field in medicine has only been around since the 70s. Um, neurophysiology. So with that, right, it's now, like we have private equity people and stock guys saying, neurophysiology is the next thing in traditional medicine, and they're bullish on it. So the timepiece doesn't mean as much, I think, in this age, right?
Got it.
Um, I think the caveat with peptide therapy is simply that big pharma, has trouble controlling it, um, and it's developing. But the thing about it is, like, side effects are minimal, if at all, and it's depending on the peptide. There's peptides that have zero side effects. Um, so it's going to continue to grow, and I think the milestone around it is, people in healthcare, started to hear about some of these things, and some of the stuff has existed for a while, but really it was, the milestone was the Ozempic piece, right? So
Mhm.
that
And,
Ozempic is a peptide called semaglutide. Oh, go ahead.
and like again, like really high level,
Yeah.
my understanding, like it affects more than like one mechanism in the body, right? Or is that just certain peptides? Because like
So they,
semaglutide, doesn't it affect like your it affects your stomach, but it also has like impact to like your brain function and how your signals are communicating hunger and even thirst.
yeah, exactly. So, it reacts in your intestinal tract to kill those hunger cues, and it also, creates more insulin production in your body to not allow for sugar spikes, right? So we have more insulin. We're not spiking our blood sugar. So it does react in multiple arenas. And then there's other peptides like, BPC 157, which is kind of a catch-all for me in my practice, which, affects, kidney function, liver function, joint health, cognitive function to a certain extent. So
So you
that's the thing.
dabble in like all of that.
Yeah.
Wow,
You know,
that's incredible.
what's unique about our clinic is, we build these really robust packages for people, on a peptide platform, right? So, I typically, it's a very unique patient that I think needs the weight loss peptide. First and foremost, it's, we run a lab panel that you'll never see from your PCP or an ER, ever, right? It's very extensive, and from there, we start with supplementation. You know, I think it's pretty commonly known that our food is trash, our water is trash. The triple C's in the water are poison. So with that, like, unfortunately, every human has to supplement. So we start there,
Mhm.
and like the rate of vitamin D deficiency is probably 95%, right?
Yeah, I'm
So
I'm Northeast, and my doctor has said for the last couple of decades, everybody I prescribe everybody vitamin C, and now I'm hearing it's like not just Northeast; it's pretty much
uh,
all over because we all sit inside. We don't get out as much, right? Your sun exposure is like cut to almost nothing. It's like a sign of where we all end up. The majority of our life, it's indoors.
Exactly. So, we start there, and then, then it becomes, we fix the issues, the big ticket issues, right? Hormone levels, um, thyroid issues, whatever the case may be. If they're having some cognitive deficiencies, we have platforms. If they have, depression, which has been, really a cool thing for me to see, as people getting off SSRIs based on, peptide therapies. Um,
So it's like their own body is healing itself.
exactly. So,
That's amazing.
yeah.
And so, like with SSRIs, I know there's tons of across all the available products. There's so many side effects. So, like, is that another example of where there's little or no side effects when you're treating someone with depression?
You know, again, I think there's a time and place for a lot of the pharmaceuticals, right? I think it's far more constrained than what they're prescribed for. I will say this: we work with, I've worked with a ton of, ex-military veterans, SF guys that, they spent 20 years in the, global war on terror, right? They've done some things, and they're not only are they self-medicating, but they're getting stuff from a psychiatrist, whatever. And we have a handful that have gone strictly to a peptide platform. And the cool thing has been, for me hearing is, as these guys say, we got five or so of them, they're like, I'm genuinely happy and it's not manufactured. Um, and so that's a big deal, right? Like, I think a lot of this stuff, Xanax, all the stuff, like, sure, you can be okay and it can kill your anxiety. You can be happy, but it's, you feel it's manufactured,
Mm,
whereas peptide therapy, it's your own body doing it.
yeah, yeah. There was a brief period in my life where I had, you know, uh, was going through some things, and I was taking, the traditional route. I forget what exactly it was now, but yeah, you just felt like, yeah, all right, my mood was better. I wasn't dwelling on things, but I think you hit the nail on the head. How I felt is it felt manufactured and not
Yeah.
natural.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a tough piece for people, right?
Oh yeah. And something like while you were talking, I'm thinking about like you were talking about pharmaceuticals and then you moved to IVs and then you learned about peptides. I'm just curious from going through the process of all that, what was I have a feeling clearly peptides was a lot better than the pharmaceuticals. I'm just curious where your like mental stress, like, was it released when you finally found about peptides and figured out like this is a little bit better for your body? And like, because I know when you look at a pharmaceutical, anything, it's just like all the side effects. Yes, it'll cure this, but you're gonna have this, and this, and then your probability of whatever it could be, cancer, infection, whatever it may be, like that's also stressful. So, anyways, when it comes to the peptides, of course, there's probably going to be side effects for anything, everything that as well. But because it's more of a natural sense, my question is like with the mental stress you had before, I'm just curious how it naturally released when you found out about peptides.
Um, so like more so for me, I'm an athlete. I played college football. I've been, on a professional CrossFit team. And I got into mixed martial arts, kind of after football. Um, so a lot of it for me was the physical aspect. Unfortunately, I'm that guy that's injury prone. Turns out there's a genetic marker for it that I have. Um, but, so my thing was trying to stay competitive as long as possible, right? So, the peptide therapy, really gave me the opportunity to do so. I'm well into my 40s now, and I fought this last October, which is pretty wild. Uh, I will say though, the physical benefits, on these particular platforms, depending on what it is, right? Like I said, there's a peptide for everything. Tendon, tendon elasticity and strength, cardiovascular health, all the things. I will say, when I was, my late 30s, due to, CTE, concussions, all the things, I did start having some pretty significant, you know, issues cognitively, right? Like memory loss, just that inability to like find something in the moment, you know? Um,
Mhm.
and so our cognitive platform is something I will take for the rest of my life. It was like, and I tell people this all the time when we're prescribing, me personally, I noticed a deficiency, and, I started taking our brain peptides basically. And within 2 weeks, like I'll never forget it. I woke up one morning and I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, you're back. Here we go.
Was it like a limitless moment?
It was, man. It's
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's
yeah, it was
awesome.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially in the athlete aspect too. Like you feel kind of hopeless whenever like you want to compete and your body is shutting down on you. And I know we talked about it a little bit before. It's like all I want to do is go out and do things, and my body's basically just not allowing me to do that. So like with the help of something that's actually beneficial for our body, because you are right, like yeah, drink water, but don't drink this water because this and this. Don't forget to eat healthy foods, but don't eat these
Oh
healthy
wait, we
foods
don't
because
have
of
any
this.
healthy food.
Yeah,
yeah,
and then when we do, we poison them with certain things. So it's just like you are right. Like you talked about how we have to have supplements for everything. I just recently heard that on TV too. I'm like, you are right. Like nothing in our food is nutritional valued anymore, that we have to have specific things to start to fuel our body. And then when everything makes sense, like you said, like you just woke up and had this like, no, I'm back. And that doesn't happen to a lot of people. And you were able to kind of find that magic through this source. And unfortunately, you had to be me and Lou always talk about people have to go to the lowest of their lows. Sometimes they do it to themselves, sometimes like their body does it to them, other times it's other people doing it to them, but eventually they get back to it. It just takes a while, and it is nice, like at least with the medicine it worked within 2 weeks. Like that's something that
yeah,
I feel like everybody's like, wow, like I would love to have that opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you know what? That's a fantastic point, Sarah. It's like opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
what what is the accessibility for like the average person? I know you were talking about, early in the podcast. You're like, I want this to be accessible to people. So, um, what's like price point like on these various peptides, and what's the accessibility like if you're like, are you like one of few, this is like multiple questions, sorry,
right.
but like in terms of who would be prescribing these things, is it becoming more prevalent? Are we just scratching the surface here, and like what's the cost like?
Yeah. Well, so, I had when I started this thing, I had a brick and mortar here locally, and it was great. It was kind of this mecca that I created, where you walk in the door, there's a gym, so you can have personal training, you have group fitness, you can do your own thing. We had a chiropractor on staff, we had a physical therapist, we had a full recovery center, with cryo and cold plunge and red light and everything everybody's doing. We had a full lab. So it was this really one-stop shop, holistically, right? And we started doing a study with NFL alumni on some of our platforms. And it just kind of hit me that, I can only affect a 15-mile radius. So,
Mm,
we're currently in the midst of launching an app that's going to be accessible to everybody, right? So we can, have virtual consults and, prescribe, and everything drop ships, right? You don't have to come into a building. We have at-home lab testing. We can also refer out to, your local lab. Um, so, my goal, like I said, is to have this accessible to everybody, and that's coming in very short order. So with that, there's a lot of people out there there's a ton of clinics, right? What I will say that's unique about us is the way we go about it. Nobody runs labs the way we do. Nobody reads labs the way I do. I have a group of, in fact, the former team doc for the Atlanta Falcons, is kind of leading the charge for me to put together a YouTube series on how to read labs. Um, it's just super unique in what we do. And I think, we have, kind of the best platform for patients out there. And with that, like, everybody's struggling in something. So there's something we can put together, even if it just comes down to, getting your lab work, right? Like everybody has a right to know what's going on in their body. And I hate that PCPs push back on that. Like at
Yeah.
any given moment, you should be able to walk in and say, I want lab work. I want to know
Right.
what's going on, and I want a full panel of lab work. And if it comes down
And
to a thing,
and not really understanding like what a full panel is, right? So like you're thinking, hey, I'm asking, give me everything, or give me anything that has to do with XYZ, my thyroid, let's say.
yeah,
And they just run the traditional panel when
that's it.
it sounds like there's so much more that could be explored when you're talking about things like the thyroid or
I see it every day.
yeah.
And here's well, like, to answer the rest of your questions, price points vary.
Mhm.
Here's what I would, really implore people to watch out for is, peptides are an interesting space right now. You need to go to a clinic, whether it's us or it's somebody else. Go to a reputable clinic, because you can go online and you can buy everything we discuss, right? But what you buy online is not pharmaceutical grade. When that
Mm.
vial shows up, it will say not for human use or for lab use only. And it's built
Wow.
for research. So
Right.
this is where the side effects can come in. This is where the potential for anaphylactic can happen.
Mm.
Um, obviously I would tell people to come to us because I think we do it the best. But no matter where you go, do not go online and buy
Mm.
peptides without a prescription. Just do not.
First off, don't be shy. Shamelessly plug the hell out of your company. You have our full blessing to just
Yeah, yeah,
broadcast, get your name
yeah,
out there, man. This is exciting stuff. And
yeah.
we want to help, Sarah and I both, have the same vision as you. We want to help more than just our, the circle of influence
Yeah.
is small, you know but when you use resources like podcasts, and we have the ability to reach so many more people, just in the terms of how limited we are in the audience and getting people to watch us or listen to us, but it's like it's a vast ocean that we
100%.
can reach. So shit, why not?
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
Humility is,
now,
yeah.
what's the name of your company, and how can people look for you or find you?
So yeah, interesting story. It was, this has been um, a very sad moment for me personally. It was called Life Lab. Um, so the app was out in beta form, and like I said, we're making some waves. So we have a media company kind of helping us out, and they did some research. And apparently, there is a Life Lab that exists in Canada, which um, doesn't affect us, except for the fact that Quest Diagnostics just purchased them. So
Oh,
yeah, then it
convenient.
became an issue. Yeah, it became an issue of, do we want a legal battle, or do we want to just change our name this early? So
Yeah.
it's now called ARK, ARKK Genetics, but it's GNX. We're trying to plug into the new
Spice it
Kendrick.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, the new Kendrick album. We have some swag, right? So
yeah.
ARKK GNX. So that app should be out, in the next couple of weeks. Website's out, but
That's
like I said,
exciting.
we've been working for quite a while now already. And the wild thing is, right, is we have zero social media presence. We don't have a website, and we have 500 patients, and we've been invited to the NFL Summer PA kickoff, and so we think we're going to do some real good out there, honestly.
So, all right. So when the app goes live, like, how are you going to reach people so that they know you're out there?
I mean, that's where, so my thought process was, I want to pack everything that was in my brick and mortar into an app, right, as much as humanly possible. So it's not just you log on and get peptides, right? We have some world-class trainers that are going to put workouts together. We're going to have recovery options. We're going to have, which it's already happening. We have an affiliate network of everything you would ever need for your body that are kind of vetted by me. So if you need to go talk to somebody about your mental health, if you do need to go see somebody in person, right, you're going to have a resource in the app to go find it locally. Uh, and then with that too, like, everything will exist in there. So, you log on, we have a quick consult with either myself or somebody on my team. We get your lab work, and then we have a follow-up once those labs come in. And then from there, right, we put together, a supplement platform for you. We put together, peptide, hormone replacement, whatever it is you're needing. And the nice thing is it all just drop ships. So, and then you have access, right? And there's, peptide education that lives in there, right? So you don't have to spend, which I have no problem doing. I'll spend an hour on the phone with each patient, very much describing labs and what they mean and why they need certain things. But, if you don't want to do that, right, we have, educational platforms in there. And my thing with this is, this can get real complicated and real scientific. So my thing with the app is I want everything digestible to anybody, right? If you've never taken a biology class, that's fine. Like, we can explain it in a way that you understand.
Nice.
One-stop shop.
Yeah. So, like, I know you talked about the application for athletes. Obviously, you talked about military. Clearly, law enforcement, first responders suffer the same issues with mental health, having all the things that they're exposed to on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that we do is, with breaking barriers, is we try to expose people to all these things that are, that are available for them, right? Peel away the onion, so to speak. So, I think one of the things that is a huge benefit that I see, and I'm so happy that you came on, is that this is so enlightening. If it's enlightening to me, I'm sure other people are out there going, wow, I had no idea the different applications there are to this. And getting this, in front of people to see like what's possible in terms of their health, their mental, their physical, their spiritual. It's all, like you said, holistically. It's, it all works together. So I'm excited. If you're open to it, I'll throw the links. We put stuff on our website, for the podcast, but heck, I'll put your links to all your resources on my website, man, because this is amazing stuff, and I want to help as many people break barriers in all the positive ways that we can. Sarah, she deals with groups and individuals all the time. I mean, Sarah, you could talk to this way better than I can. What applications do you see in your practice in this additional tool in the toolbox?
Yeah. So as people know, like, my main focus is mental performance, but when it comes to specifically what I do, mindset, psychology, it's just the different terminology, and everybody has their like different quirk, we'll call it. So like, I work with like injured athletes. I can work with people that might just have pressure like situations, very, very wide span. So when it comes to these things, I feel like it's very similar to like, maybe somebody's not, I mean, peptides can help with injuries. So it could be in a sense of like injury prevention. And basically it's a way to create mental tools specifically for when they might be having like more of a negative mindset, and they keep getting back into that rut of maybe the depression or anxiety, and they don't know how to stay afloat. So we all know that our mood goes in waves. It's pretty much of a roller coaster. My goal is, when you're down on the roller coaster, I'm there to give you mental tools to bring you back up on the top of the roller coaster. And we know that not every, like, we just want to make sure that it's never going to be linear. Like, we're always going to be a little bit bumpy, but I want our bumps to be small. I don't want them to be dipped all the way down where you're literally in a hole because it's winter, and right now everyone's in seasonal depression right now. Oh, at least Lou, I have 87-degree weather right now. Oh, we just talked about that.
I was in a funk, man. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So even though, like I said, I work with mental performance, most of the things that I deal with people, it's not even about their skills. It's not even about what they're trying to do when it comes to their athletics. It's always something happening in their actual like daily life that's affecting them. And I'll give a little story about me right now. And I've talked to Lou about this. I'm actually having issues right now because I had a really hard time getting my weekly medicine that I usually get. I had insurance issues, and then I couldn't get it shipped, and it was a whole thing. So it was to the point where I have to take it every 2 weeks, and I didn't take my first shot was last week, and I haven't taken anything since January. Anyways, fast forward to why I'm talking about this. My training was really bad, not because I wasn't motivated to do it myself. My body was fatigued and I wasn't able to do the things I want to do. So, anyways, that's why people come to me, because if a daily life thing is happening to them, like, hey, like I'm dealing with something medical that's affecting me, wanting to do, hang out with my friends, go for a run, try a Spartan race. That's why people talk to me, because it's more about let's get those life skills to keep you up and motivated. Because when you're down, I don't want you literally in the ground to the point where you feel like you're hopeless. I want to be able to keep you at least afloat above the ground so we can hopefully climb back up that ladder so you can get exactly where you need to be. So, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, I give mental skills specifically for people to enhance their performance outside of things. And it's not always athletics. I can help people with business owners, military CEOs, performance arts aspect, anybody that's a high level performer. That's where I'm like, you know what? I have some mental tools for you that could help. And that's where I get a little fun and exciting, where it's like, are we working on confidence? Are we working on mental toughness? Is it just organizational skills? Do we need to get into some cognitive behavioral therapy? And that's when I start to nerd out a little bit. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, just over the last year, I went to a physical therapist for an issue with my cervical spine, and I was going to see a physical therapist that, they're probably used to treating like, older folks that had either a terrible fall or accident or whatever, and they're just trying to get back to basic life skills. And
Yeah.
I was coming from, doing high level, performance, and then it was like, well, why do you need to lift those heavy circles, or why do you need to do so many pull-ups? Or I'm like, because I want to. I love this, and I still got a lot of life left in me. Just tell me what I got to do. And it's like they didn't have the skill set. It's like, so you have to find the right the right health health care provider. And ultimately, when I did, night and day. So like, if it's an application, knowing the peptides have applications where, you've done all the mental performance training that you can for a client, and go, you know what, I think that maybe this is an avenue you might want to explore. It's like having all the accessibility to the various tools, and going, you know what, I don't necessarily know enough about it. It's not my wheelhouse, but hey, this guy Kris, like, he's like top notch. He knows all this shit. Maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't, but at least explore that as an option, and let's check that box. Maybe it's exactly what you needed, because what happens is, at least in my case, I happened to stumble on somebody who was like, wow, I had the same issue, and this is what I had to do. And 3 months, 3 weeks later, I was already feeling better. And it was just going from physical therapy to dry needling. But in New York, a physical therapist can't do dry needling. They can't, they're not licensed to do it in New York. So maybe they just didn't know. Not that they were like, you know, maybe it was just simply like, I didn't know that was a resource that could help this patient, and not just being like, well, why? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was just
Yeah.
just that.
I mean, I'll say this in my experience is, there are bad doctors, right? There are
Yeah.
bad physical therapists. There are bad chiropractors. And so that's, something that I'm really passionate about in our app is, our affiliate program with providers, right? Like, uh, they will be personally vetted by me. Um, just, to that extent, with each injury I've had, um, I'm currently in, my last injury, for instance, the physical therapist was great. He understood I was a fighter, and he did his research and figured out, methodology that was going to work for me to get me back in the cage. But I've dealt with people that, are passive, and they're like, okay, here's your list of exercises, just do this. And I'm like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to build for people as well, is like this network of actual quality providers, right? For, and again, not everybody's a high level athlete, and I get that. And that doesn't mean they can't participate in peptide therapy and better their lives and better their wellness. Um, but if you need something, whether it's, you do sit at a desk and you get carpal tunnel, like I want to have the best, neurologist, on the planet for carpal tunnel at your fingertips, right? Um, if you are a high performing athlete, if you are aging but you still want to compete, I want to make sure that that network is robust enough to, like in your situation, right? There's no question of who to go to, right? You log in the app, right? We have a little consult, and it's like, okay, you're in New York, here's your guy.
Mhm.
Instead of this like wondering. And that's the unfortunate piece of healthcare right now, is so much of it is bad and people just don't get it. You think if you walk into a
Yeah.
hospital or a clinic, you're going to get the best care possible. And that's just not the case.
Well, all right. So you kind of mentioned this early on, and it's like I've heard the term. It's like medicine 1.0 and 2.0, and 1.0, the old school, like the traditional, like, oh, here's exactly the protocol that we're going to follow because we've done it for 100 years, and a lot of doctors aren't moving away from that yet. But but just understanding that there is this shift, and patients now have to be more of an advocate for themselves than ever before. My father was a certified registered nurse anesthetist,
Mhm.
mouthful, right? Um, and so, like, I used to take for granted, going to the doctors because, like, behind the scenes, he's talking all this stuff, but I
Yeah.
wasn't really like getting it. I was just like, oh, the doctor's taking care of me. But my father knew what to ask and where to, you know, where to get the right information, right? Because he was in
Exactly.
that space.
Yep.
And that's what patients have to do for themselves now without any kind of medical background. And it's just, yeah, it's a major hurdle for some people.
It's unfortunate. I'm in the same boat, right? Like my family gets the best medical care simply because, I'm in that
You're
world.
in the space. Yeah.
Yeah. But I have friends, and it just recently happened. There's a girl on my fight team. Her partner had a scaphoid fracture, wrist fracture. They were over for the Super Bowl. And she's like holding her wrist and doesn't have a brace on. And I'm like, hey, like, what's up with your wrist, dude? And she was like, oh, like, I don't know. I think it's broken. We took an x-ray at urgent care and they referred me to an orthopedist, but they couldn't get me in for 2 weeks. So I was like, you have the
Mm.
x-ray? He's like, I think I can log in and get it. She had a wrist fracture and they let her go without a
And they just
cast.
discharged her.
Yeah, non-displaced. Like she could have put at least a brace on, right? Like to get you to,
Put an
uh,
ace bandage, something.
yeah, anything, right? And so, thankfully I was able to like get her in, with a colleague like the next day and got her casted. But she had already that was 10 days, right? I'm like, you're gonna heal. If there's a slight displacement or something, there's a
It's going to heal fucked
ligamental
up.
issue. Yeah. And that's just commonplace, man. Like they let her go. And I
That's
could not believe
insane.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely insane. So, I mean, it, so this is something, I mean, you sound like a stand-up guy, obviously, but like you said, there's so many bad doctors out there. So what's the ethical considerations for this space and how your application is going to reach across? Because this is, you're not limited to the state boundaries, right? So what
Right.
are like the ethical considerations here?
I mean, for me is this, I want accessibility, right? And like my goal really is to help as many people as possible. So, we see these clinics and I've seen it 1,000 times. And like the biggest one is the weight loss stuff, right? They're charging, 4 and 5x what it costs for, Ozempic, and they're just gouging people. And, something we've done in my clinic is we've really just capped our prices. We don't mark things up, really at all. So our thing is, from an ethical standpoint, like we do things the right way. Every patient gets the same access. They get as much time what they need with me reviewing labs and discussing the whys and really allowing them to understand at a level that they can digest. And then with that, right, like, I don't want to be the business model of we have 500 patients that we charge $20,000 a month, right? I want 1 million patients that we charge $500 a month.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I want this accessible, and I just want, you know, I want humanity to heal at the end of the day, right? Like we're all just so polluted, with everything, right? Like, and if I can make a small dent in that, I think, that fills my cup, you know.
Yeah. And uh, while you're talking, we talked about like there's a lot of bad doctors out there and people jacking up prices on specific things. Have you ever heard of like the term, it's called learned hopelessness?
I have, yeah.
I haven't.
So
So yeah.
yeah. Well, Kris, let me hear your explanation on it. I want to see if our terms are different.
I mean, right, like, this allowance of people in power to kind of keep people down, right? So like they don't think there's anything that can be done, and just is what it is.
Yeah.
It's this like,
Yeah.
I like the term forced hopelessness, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, and that's it. That's the unfortunate piece is controlling parties can create that for a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a little experiment that this teacher did where she gave one side of the class a different piece of paper with some words, and then on the other side of the class another piece of paper with different words, and she basically said, I want you guys to solve these these words. So it's basically a word that was jumbled up and you had to like change it. And on the right side of the room they had really easy words that were super solvable, so they were, raising their hand. I got number 1, it's bear. I got number 2, it's, cat. And the people on the left side, they couldn't solve the friend. Like, wait, how did you get that? And they decided to just not finish the paper at all. But guess what? The very last word on their paper was solvable. But because they couldn't solve the first 2, and the other people were able to answer the question quicker than that they were able to solve it, they decided to completely give up. And that's what I think our healthcare is starting to be, is because you go to one doctor, they don't give you answers. You go to this doctor, they don't give you answers. And then you kind of get some direction. And then you finally go to a specialist and then they don't give you any direction. And that's where learned helplessness becomes to the point where it's like, by the time people come to you, Kris, they might not believe you. They're like, I don't know. Let's just hopefully we'll eventually get there. But since I was taught so many bad things from so many bad people, I don't know if I trust you. And that sucks for you. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I wanted to bring it up, because like when it comes to pharmaceuticals, we know how easy it is to just turn on your TV and there's a commercial, pitching something, and you just think it's going to help you, where in reality having a system like what you have can be helpful. But since it's not popular and there's so much hopelessness, are people actually going to connect the dots to see like this actually might be it? Kris actually
Sarah,
cares
we're
about
blowing this
me.
up. No, we're blowing this up. We we got to get this fucking out to everybody. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm so excited for this.
yeah. No, and I think, I mean, like I absolutely hear your point, and I think that's where, I don't have those issues with our patients, simply because, when I sit down with somebody, they have been through the ringer, right? And
Mhm.
for me, just to sit and listen, to what the issues are is comforting for them, because I actually give a shit. And then to sit down and explain, lab work with them, right? Like, I can't tell you how many people have been like, all these issues over the course of, years to decades, right? And just the fact that somebody said, they all say like, nobody has ever just sat down and explained labs to me this way. Um,
Mhm.
and it's a very comforting piece for them. And then from there, like, acknowledging that, yeah, like nobody's giving you answers, right? And these are my answers, and we have options, and we're going to fix it. And for instance, we have a family who had a son, all kinds of endocrine issues, and nobody could figure it out. And they were just his primary was just throwing him on omnitrope, which is human growth hormone, right? Insurance doesn't cover it. The dose had to increase monthly. Uh, and they're at their wits end, right? They were spending $3,000 a month on their son, and they got to me, and we went through the ringer, and again there was some trepidation in the sense of like they had done all of this stuff and spent a fortune, um, and I shit you not, 90 days after we got him on a protocol that worked, I get a text message that you could tell was written in tears, and it was just Kris, we are so thankful you've given us our child back. He has smiled and laughed for the first time in years. Um, he's gaining weight, he's growing, he's doing all these things, and they're again religious or not, like whatever you believe, but they were like, we really feel like the hands of God are on you, driving this. So those moments, right? Like, yeah, people can come in and be cautious, which they should be. Um, don't don't believe what I tell you. Do your research, right? Like I'll provide you with resources, but go find your own too, right? Um, understand what it is you're putting in your body, and I demand that of all of our patients, right? Like I send our info sheets on every peptide, regardless of how basic it is or how much you don't care to learn. Like I want you to have access, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to understand what's going on in your body. You need to understand the why. At the end of the day, nobody's going to take better care of you than you. So it's a big deal to me. The education piece is probably the biggest at the end of the day. Like I love helping people, but I want people to understand what resources are available and what they can do, right? And have an understanding around it, not just blindly listen to providers anymore.
Yeah.
So for like the aspiring neurophysiologists, or even just if you were talking to your younger self, just starting out on this journey, like what advice would you give yourself? You know, rewind to just starting this journey.
Truth be told, there's been moments in traditional medicine over the past, I don't know, call it 10, 12 years where there's been these cycles, call it politics, whatever. But like at the end of the day, insurance companies have just gotten more powerful and more powerful. Uh, I would have told myself to step out earlier, to start exploring, other
From the mainstream.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, like you get so indoctrinated with like you said, right? Here's the protocol, this is what works. And until there's some like giant chasm, right? Some event, like I mean, for me it was COVID. Um, Even though I was already having my issues with mainstream medicine from an insurance company standpoint, whatever, right? I don't know without COVID I would have stepped away in the way that I have. Um, so I think, yeah, like this is where people need to challenge the norm, right? Like we're seeing it now, right? The fact that I have 30 seasoned veteran, doctors that, really should be my mentors, and they're asking me like, hey, to teach me about this stuff, right?
That's awesome.
Um,
Heck yeah.
yeah,
And
where
it's great that they're clearly, they're in that, they're at that level where they haven't
yeah,
gone, I know everything I need to know. And they're looking at you like, no, this is another resource. So that's awesome.
yeah. And it's not, it's few and far between, right? Like most people think they got it all figured out, but there is a movement of re-education, right? To understand that there are other options out there that may be better, right? Um, that's the thing with medical school is like it is just very indoctrinating. You're just taught that this is the way, and once you know it, like this is the way you need to do it. And if anybody challenges you, they're wrong, and
Right.
that's just not the case anymore.
so much. There's so much. It's like, geez. I'm just floored by this, and I'm just incredibly grateful that you were willing to come on here and share this piece. And one more time, where can people find you? What's the
yeah, I mean, this crew is near and dear to my heart. So yeah, the website, I think the landing page is up, but it's arkkgnx.com. But if anybody wants to reach out, Kris, KRAS at arkkgnx.com.
And we're going to put it in the show notes so people will have it. But no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, all the resources, any links that you want to provide, throw them, to me and Sarah. We'll make sure that they become part of the show notes as well, so people can find you. We want to make sure as many people can find you as possible. When the app goes live, definitely share that with us. We'll get that up on the website. We'll update the show notes as well. And there's one last thing that we kind of do, right? And that's why you're here. And it's our final question, and it's how you got here. And who would you love to see on this podcast, and what would you ask them if you were the one interviewing them?
So yeah, my cousin, who was found recently, the long story there, but he's a wonderful kid, and I'm very happy to have him in my life. I would honestly ask that my business partner be in. He's a bigger name for sure. I would prefer that not talk about our company just because his story is so wild, and it's very voting. He's working on a podcast himself. They have a few episode cans. It's called Undrafted. He played 6 years in the NFL. He started the combine, right, like the training program for professional bull riding, as a 6'3" defensive lineman from Buffalo, New York. He's just a wild dude. He's the strength coach for Raquel Pennington, former UFC bantamweight champ. But his story is just amazing. His name's Antoine Burton. So I'll get you guys his info, and I'm sure he'd love to be on, but he's a character, and just his story is great. And, I love the idea of his podcast. It kind of really falls in line with yours, right? Because, it is undrafted. He was an undrafted player and ended up making it 6 years, right? But it's the idea that, any human can be undrafted and left behind and overlooked, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't, conquer and accomplish.
I love that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he's a testament to that. At this point in life, I just call him my North Star, right? Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen Key and Peele, the sketch comedy show, where they have they have Obama, and then they have the translator. It's
yes.
very much the opposite with us. I'm the loudmouth guy, and he's my calm, nice translator that explains to people.
That's
awesome. Maybe we should have you back on with him.
If he's there, the F word will fly out my mouth. Pretty good. This is a very subdued version of Kris.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us on Breaking Barriers Beyond the Finish Line. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out. Until then, get out there, get after it, and take command.